Hello everyone. Welcome back to another Commander review for Magic the Gathering. We are in the Champions of Kamigawa set, and one of the cool things about this Commander in particular, which is Horobi Death's Wail, my bad, was as I was going through my list of legendaries throughout this set, obviously there was a big chunk in between Hisoka and Horobi, which is the Honden cycle, which was the first shrines ever introduced to the game, and I love shrines. We'll talk about shrines more when we eventually get to the Shrine Commander, or the Shrine Commanders that I have planned. But you may have noticed all 5 of the shrines from this set are the background images for this entire set of Commander review, which I'm really happy about because I love shrines. I think they're a very fun subtype to build around. But after passing all the Hondens, we get to Horobi Death's Wail, which is a legendary spirit. It's a 4/4 with a mana value of 4, 2 generic, and 2 black. And then it has the keyword flying, which is important. And a triggered ability: whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, destroy that creature. And that means anytime your opponents, no matter what, if anything gets targeted, it gets destroyed, including Horobi. Very important to note that. If the creature is the only target of the spell or ability, that spell or ability won't resolve. That's the second thing to note with this triggered ability. If you are doing something where it's a single target, that spell or ability essentially is countered. Not that it's actually countered, but it essentially is. It's fizzled out because as the stack resolves, Horobi's trigger will resolve before the spell, destroying the creature. So, unless the creature has indestructible, and the spell you're using to get rid of it is like Swords to Plowshares or something, Horobi's trigger will always negate, essentially, the spell that is targeting. However, if you are doing something where you have multiple targets, whether you're targeting a creature and a player, or you're targeting a creature and a planeswalker, then the rest of the spell will still resolve because there are other targets that do fulfill the requirements of the spell that is being cast. So that is important to note. A very common example would be like a typical red spell that lets you deal damage to multiple targets. If one of those targets is a non-creature permanent or player, then the spell will still resolve because of the fact that there is still a legal target in play as the spell resolves. So that is important to know. Multiple targets can be good. Also, like with that idea with the red spell there, that is also a way that you can get rid of multiple targets, even though the spell will still fizzle. If you can divide 3 damage amongst any number of targets, then you could destroy 3 creatures by essentially giving this burn spell Death Touch. In a weird way, because of course the spell fizzles. But really cool concept, really cool card. Let's talk more about it. Scuttlemutt is the card that I chose to synergize with this card, simply because you can tap this creature and turn any creature into a color of your choice. Remember that Scuttlemutt's ability will not resolve because Horobi's ability will resolve first once the target has been declared. So the creature will actually never become whatever the color you pick is, unless the creature has indestructible, or some way to prevent it from dying to Horobi's triggered ability. So, great way to remove threats off the board by simply tapping Scuttlemutt down, and it is a mana rock, which is really nice. However, remember that anytime you are doing this, 9 times out of 10, Horobi's ability will override and essentially fizzle or counter Scuttlemutt's ability from actually resolving. essentially replaces it. And on the subject of wanting to replace it with destroying creatures, the deck that I am building around Horobi is actually a Death Slinger deck, where I am focused on playing a lot of destruction spells to blow up my creature's board state. And I also just noticed here Revel in Riches is slightly smaller than the other cards in this image. That's bugging me, but I'm gonna move on. I apologize in advance, it just stood out to me, and I know someone's gonna notice it and put it in the comments below, so I'm gonna nip it in the bud right now. Anyway, this deck is all about destroying my opponent's creatures by casting a lot of spells. And I have great ways of winning it, like with Revel in Riches is a great win con in this deck, so on and so forth, and I need ways to get around hexproof and indestructible, blah blah blah. A popular deck idea on EDH Rec kind of falls under the Aristocrat / Edict category. It's pretty much your typical mono black strategy. You're gonna blow up your opponent's stuff by any means necessary, and a lot of the best of ways to do that are with permanent cards like Grave Betrayal. Cauldron of Souls actually is insane with this commander because you can choose any number of target creatures just by tapping Cauldron of Souls, which is really cool. So great, any typical mono black Edict or Aristocrat or board wipe strategy, this commander fits great in. One thing I wanted to note though is Cauldron of Souls was high up on the list for this deck idea on EDH Rec. This is another one that you need to be mindful that the ability of Cauldron of Souls will actually not resolve. You will target any number of targets, both yours and your opponent's if you choose. But Horobi's ability will prevent the creature gaining Persist, because Horobi's ability will resolve first. So if you are trying to blow up your own creatures with Cauldron of Souls, don't, unless you have some other way of bringing them back into play, because Horobi will resolve before the Cauldron of Souls does, every time. But with that said, this is a 5 mana tap, instantly board wipe your entire opponent's board states of creatures for 5 mana, one-sided board wipe. Absolutely insane. Really, really cool. And finally, the weird, janky, unique deck idea I tried to build with this is really just tried to like hone in on the fact that graveyards are going to get full, essentially. So on top of you blowing up your opponent's stuff, anytime your opponents target something, that will also trigger Horobi. So as long as you can keep Horobi alive, naturally the board state will lean more towards creature destruction than not. So I was thinking maybe we'd build like a permanence matters, like in the graveyard kind of strategy. We saw a little bit of this strategy from the Descent mechanic that came out in the latest set of Ixalan. But there are a few other cards that kind of care about this stuff. Undergrowth is a mechanic that came from Ravnica that cares about things in your graveyard. There's Threshold, there's Delirium. So essentially any kind of graveyard deck, this commander could be a possible choice to lead your deck, simply because it does naturally help lean towards filling the graveyard by destroying creatures off the board. So you can have some fun synergies about filling the graveyard, whether it's mill or just simply destroying creatures naturally, whatever you decide to choose. But this would be a graveyard kind of reanimator strategy. And that's going to do it for Horobi Death's Wail. Very cool card, very fun, very tricky ability to work around. You do need to remember that anytime anyone targets your stuff, including you, your stuff will get blown up, and that includes Horobi. One of the hardest things you need to be aware of with Horobi is You can't just put Lightning Greaves in play or Swift Boots in play and then expect to equip this to Horobi Death's Wail, because equipping requires you to target the creature that you are equipping to, which would then kill Horobi. So you have to find some weird, interesting ways of reanimating or protecting Horobi without Horobi triggering itself and destroying itself, which is very fun, very cool. Its power alone makes it a very popular commander to build around, which is why it has S tier. But overall, very fun card. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything I missed, any synergies or combos I didn't talk about. And thanks again for watching, guys. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!